So I'd like to talk about the nature of nothing, which from one perspective it might sound like there isn't very much to say about it at all. Or from another perspective it sounds like perhaps something we can define completely, because its essence must be accessible from any place in the domain of thought. Because one does not need to produce any kind of element in order to interact with it and its nature. To talk about this subject, I'd like to start by explaining what definition is, what it really means. Definitions are not something that we come up with as people. They can be. We can see an object and define it a certain way, define it as having a certain quality or characteristic. But unless that quality is truly reflective of the nature of that object, that definition isn't very useful. And so it is not what you could call true definition. So in that sense, reality exhibits quality, and words follow quality. Words follow that exhibition, and we use a name to follow that exhibition. Those names can come closer to or stray further from what something actually is relative to their relationship to other names. Without getting into that idea right now, let's work with some simple terms. So there is often this question in philosophy of what it means to exist. And this may sound like something that cannot be defined easily. But in fact, there is a very clear definition of what existence is, in the sense that it is that which differentiates itself from that which does not exist. So if you're having some experience at all, then you must exist. If there is some quality at all, then it is a quality of existence. It has to be. That which does not exist has no qualities other than to not exist. Because as soon as there is a quality, that is something that is, when it is compared to the potential for it to have never been and to not be. So that's how existence can be defined. It is that which exhibits some quality other than to not exist. But what I wanted to talk about today is nothing, because nothing is very interesting and there is a lot we can say about it. What makes nothing nothing? Well, there is a system within which all things exist, which is to say that all things are expressions of a system. How can I put this? There are parts and there are relationships between parts. The relationship between parts is systemic. Parts themselves are expressions of a system. And so if we look at reality as a system, it might seem like an either-or kind of a situation. Either you have something or you have nothing. Either the system resolves to no quality whatsoever, or it resolves into existence in that structure. But that may not actually be the case, and here's why. The reason for this is that nothing itself can coexist with something. Now we think about this usually in terms of, there's either something or there is nothing in a location. But it's not about location, it's about the domain of existence itself, whether or not existence exists at all. And in fact, the existence of nothing as a pure totality, essentially, may be not only something that would, remove the possibility of existence, but it may actually be a prerequisite for existence. And the reason for this is that nothing can't exist in a vacuum. And what I mean by this is that if we look at the nature of nothing itself, and we look at it definitionally, what is it? Nothing is that which is undifferentiated. Nothing is a quality, it's a thing, but it has no differentiation. And so the reason for this is that as soon as you have differentiation, as soon as you have quality, specific different qualities, or quality at all, really, differentiated from nothing, you no longer have nothing. How can I put this in terms that are easy to understand? Essentially, if you can name two things, if two things differentiate themselves from each other, they can't be nothing, because you can describe them as something other than nothing. They have a relationship to each other. They have an existential quality. Nothing itself is that which is undifferentiated. But in a very likely sense, it cannot stay that way. It doesn't mean that nothing gets destroyed by the existence of something, but whatever nothing is, it can't just stay nothing. And the reason for that is that differentiation is necessary. It's a necessity of consciousness. Consciousness cannot exist without differentiation, meaning that if nothing were truly the total domain of reality, it would be imperceptible. Aside from not being able to produce consciousness, because there would be no way to differentiate it and perceive it. Now, this is all very complicated. It's all very difficult to talk about on a certain level. But in another sense, it's very, very simple too. All it's saying is that Occam's razor essentially has a place in this reality. So Occam's razor is the idea that the simplest solution is probably the most likely response to a question. And the simplest sort of answer to reality and what it is, like let's say existence is faced with two possible states, to be or not to be. Which of those two states is simpler? Well, certainly to not be seems like the simpler state. And initially it is, at least, for there to not be any qualities that are established. That is the simplest state. Nothing exists. However, we see reality all around us. For some reason, this is the simpler state. And in fact, these two ideas coexist, because nothing, being defined as the simpler state, is initially the simpler state. But that's where complexity emerges. And then something becomes the simpler state, because nothing can't stay nothing. That's too complex a state to exist. It can't remain undifferentiated because there's no way for that to happen. Now, I don't know why that is, but we see it all around us, and that is sort of amazing.